this is Hannah Carter, volunteer naturalist here at Bernheim again, and this is part 3 of our beekeeping saga here. So what I'm doing right now, just to start out before we open the hive, is I'm smoking the hive. So you just give this a few puffs, you light a little fire in here, and what that does is it simulates a wildfire, which causes the bees to go into the hive more deeply. A lot of people think it puts them to sleep, but what it's really doing is simulating a crisis, so that they're going into the hive and they start to gorge on the honey or just try to keep themselves safe, so that they're not out up here where we're going to be checking on them and they're not as disturbed. So this particular hive is pretty healthy and pretty, let's see, they've got it so high up here. I'm gonna okay, that's it. So we normally would use a hive tool, but today we've just got a screwdriver because I have left mine at home. So we just use this to pry open the box here. Let's see, Ren, how have you used this? There we go. And so we're just going to start taking it apart. As you can see, there's some bees in there. There's going to be some bees probably in every section that you open. This hive especially are very hard workers, so that's why we've had to make it so tall. Let me put some smoke in there, because they just keep going up and up in the box and producing. And we have Kristen here again, so if she'd like to ask any questions at any time, feel free.
So Hannah, can you tell me about how many bees are in this hive? Got any rough estimate?
This one is really big. So I said in the last video that the average hive has like 50,000 or so, but this one is huge. But I would guess it's probably about the same. So they're starting to go crazy here. They're getting kind of mad. Or worried, rightfully so. Someone's breaking into their home, so let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and smoke them a little bit more at the top. Once you get it open, you want to smoke it so that they, you know, kind of calm down as well.
And so for somebody who's interested in getting started on this as a hobby, this looks to me like, you know, a really fancy hive, but it's maybe made of repurposed furniture pieces, or could you tell me how
I'm
it's
sure
put
that
together?
you could make one out of such a thing, out of repurposed furniture pieces, because all it is wood, you know. As far as I know, there might be a special kind of wood that is maybe to your advantage, but this is just wood. But we buy them. You can buy them at places like Kelly's, Beekeeping Supply, or you know, probably the apiary in Taylorsville now. So this is one of our frames. They're kind of busy. These bees are really focused. So some people might consider them kind of aggressive, but that's a good thing. They're producing a lot of honey and a lot of brood. So as you can see, they're starting to put some nectar in there. I'll hopefully get a better frame. This was probably just put in, so they're just starting to work on it. But they've made all that wax. So when we start a beehive, all there is, unless you have a template version of this frame, which is plastic, is this wood outline. And then they fill in all of that wax. They make that all themselves. And the process in making that is quite interesting. The wax is a byproduct of the honey, so as they're going out and collecting the nectar and the pollen, it processes in their stomachs. And they have 2 stomachs. And what's left over, the byproduct of those sugars, comes out of their backs, and they kind of chew it off one another. And then it eventually gets the consistency that they need, and they make the wax. And you can use the wax, you can harvest the wax as a beekeeper. And and use it to make chapsticks and candles and soaps and all kinds of things like that. So, do we want to keep opening it? Keep going?
And usually when you see honey in the supermarket, like say you go to Kroger and buy honey, most of the time it's clover, but it can be a lot more interesting than that, right? So what kind of plants are these bees feeding off of?
So we did a test on our beehives a year ago, and last year it was primarily clover at the time that we harvested, if I remember correctly, but they can pollinate on anything that, you know, they can get it from anything that you see blossoming. So the next most common thing other than clover and wildflowers are tree blossoms. and it depends on the season that they're harvesting. And a lot of people say you can tell by not only the color of the honey, well, that's already stuck back together, but also the flavor. I cannot myself tell the difference, but I also don't really care for honey, which is sort of ironic, I know, but I don't eat it, I just give it.
Do you ever get the sense as a beekeeper who's regularly tending this hive that the bees, do they recognize you? Is there any science that suggests that they can distinguish among different humans?
You know, that is a good question. I'm taking this off because there's not any honey in it, so I'm going to try to look and see if we can find some. Oh, they look a lot. So, to answer your question, I have no idea about the science about that, but I wouldn't be surprised because they are very, very smart and very like collective oriented, you know, which to me means that they build relationships and stuff like that. So I don't know though. I don't know if they recognize you or not. I think that, you know, I don't know this particular hive very well. I don't spend a lot of time with it. But I think that they just are so busy that as long as you're not directly hurting them, this is heavy. So this is good. That is what you want to see when you're getting ready to harvest. So that is all honey, and it's heavy. And you can see that they've capped it off with the wax. And the reason why they do that is they start with just putting the nectar and everything that goes in it to make what comes out as honey, but then they cap the wax so that it sort of keeps everything dry and ferments it, basically, is, for lack of a better term, what they're doing. They're cooking it in there, and before they even put the wax covering on, they flap their wings a bunch of times to dry it, and they know just how many times and just how fast to get the right level of moisture in each of those cells. So that's pretty incredible. So we're going to have a really good harvest this year. We're hoping to harvest them next week. And another thing that we have here is when you start beekeeping, you'll get one of these in a box. And it has the queen inside with a little candy covering for the door. And she and the other bees have to eat that out. And it's sugar, basically. And then she escapes, and that's how the hive is started. You'll get a box of like 10,000 bees, and you'll just shake them in there and maybe brush them out with a bee brush, which we have here. You just brush them gently, doesn't really bother them at all. And that's how you'll start your first beehive. And then you'll get to do things like this, cracking open the frames and checking for honey and checking for brood, which is babies. They have two different kinds of frames, honey and brood. And so all that is what we're doing here to help maintain these bees, and we'll harvest next week, and we hope to see you here soon.